Well, morning all. It's turns out it's Saturday. I was convinced it was Friday today when I got up. I don't think I've been abducted by aliens and lost a day. I think I just lost count. But hey, who knows? Um, yeah, I'm not gonna not gonna say what I was gonna say. Yeah, it's all good. Anyhow, yeah, I'm just chilling really. I mean, the sun's come up and it's gorgeous. There's no breeze, so I'm just hanging out, drinking coffee. I've got enough fuel, food, and water and stuff for the whole day if I need to. I probably am going to later on before they lock up go up and wander up and use the showers again just because I can, so why not. Um, yeah, I've been doing a few bits and bobs this morning. There's been some interesting updates on my job situation. I kind of decided to mentally entertain the idea of taking the voluntary redundancy and taking the money and running. And I'm kind of okay with it realistically. As much as I love my job at the Cycle Hire, working for the national park, I do find it very rewarding. um, it's not really my long-term goal is to travel, so any location dependent job isn't really my long-term goal. So with that in mind, it's not that imperative I keep it, so I am prepared for moving on if needs be. um, Having said that, I've spoken to my manager and he's spoken to his manager, and apparently the restructuring that's taking place doesn't affect cycle hire as heavily as it affects, say, the visitor centres. I've worked in the visitor centres myself when I first started for the company. I've also worked in retail and retail management on and off over the years, and realistically the visitor centres, yeah, you can get any moron to sell overpriced tea towels to rich old ladies and overpriced stationery to gullible school kids. I mean, granted, some knowledge of the national park is useful, but the way they're shifting it is the retail staff in the visitor centres are going to just be retail staff, and they're going to then employ volunteers to do the actual sort of visitor services type thing, to be like locally knowledgeable. Whereas cycle hire, they require qualified bike mechanics and experienced staff, not least of all just for insurance purposes, but they need someone who knows how to fix a bike to fix the bikes. And apparently there is funding and stuff in place so that my job's actually quite secure for the next 2 years. I'm due a pay rise in April. So while I will have to reapply for my job, and they are sort of changing the contract slightly and changing the hours a little bit, yeah, I've still got a job if I want it, essentially, is what my manager said. So that's quite nice. So that gives me options. I'm quite at ease. As much as I was initially distressed by it all, I'm kind of a lot more at ease about it now, because even the worst case scenario of me losing my job and having to take something else, I'm fairly comfortable with that. And then completely out of left field, I won't mention any names, but someone close to me potentially offered me, offered the potential of a job in another country that's, better paid and sort of much more prestigious perhaps than what I'm doing. Now, obviously, that's out of my control, and it was just like an offhand comment. So I have kind of resolved internally that if that does come up, I will take that job just because it's such a good opportunity. And I quite like the idea of emigrating to another country. So that's quite good. I've got options, is the nice thing. And yeah, so that's quite cool. This morning I've just been sitting around. I say just been sitting around. I've been doing admin. I've booked my transport back from back from Birmingham back to Derby when I land. Well, it's actually the next day. I've also messaged a couple of Airbnbs just to sort of see if I can get myself somewhere for the night, because I don't land in Birmingham Airport until, assuming the flight's on time, until about 9:15 at night, and it's a bit late to try and get public transport back to the North Midlands, or whatever you call it, East Midlands. So I'm going to stay overnight somewhere in Birmingham, but I've just been checking to find out what the latest check-in time is for a couple of these Airbnbs, so that if my flight's delayed, I don't want to be locked out, basically. And then I've also been looking around for rooms to let, basically, for when I get back. Part of me did think, this is part of why I considered the voluntary redundancy option, because the severance pay, I could have bought myself a vehicle and done, van life for a little while, which obviously would have been financially economical. in the long term. But I mean, the UK is pretty miserably cold at this time of year. Um, and I just don't fancy the idea of sleeping in a van or a car, to be honest, at least not initially. So I'm going to try and get myself some digs. There's a lot more places available in Derby itself, and it's quite commutable back to Ashbourne for my work. So yeah, so that's what I've been looking into just recently, is just trying to find myself a place that's cheap to stay, essentially. So I've still got like nearly over a week and a half, nearly 2 weeks left in Portugal. But it's, my mind's starting to move forward to, what happens when I get back to reality, so to speak. My job starts back up the second week of February, something like that. So I'll have a week's grace when I get back to the UK. Oops, just dropped my battery bank. Week's grace when I get back to the UK, before I go back to work, so should be able to settle in and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's about the size of it, really. Literally just sitting drinking coffee this morning. A couple of bananas and an apple turnover for breakfast, and yeah, might make myself some noodles or something, and then I'll wander down, get a shower. Might charge my battery bank up at the socket in the shower in the bathrooms there, and then probably wander into the park and use the Wi-Fi to upload my video for the day. Yeah, not a lot going on. I mean, I'm on a holiday. I mean, I don't know if you can see, I don't mean to rub it in, because I'm pretty sure it's still miserable back in the UK, and I'm going to be there in a week and a half's time. But I'm just enjoying the peace and tranquility of being out here in the forest. I mean, it's lovely. I was quite on edge most of the night last night. For some reason, I just felt like I was going to get another visitation from a wild hog. I did. I think it's just as I settled into my tent, I heard something rustling in the undergrowth, sort of nearby, just sort of down the hill a bit. I think it's probably just like a hedgehog or something rustling around. It didn't sound big enough, and nothing came back. But for some reason, I was just a bit jittery last night. Don't know why. I'm trying to learn to trust my intuition a bit more, my instincts. I tend to be more like cerebral. I tend to use logic and reasoning. And I found over the course of my life that even with the best information available to me at the time, logic and reasoning doesn't always give me the best results, the best outcomes. And I then find with hindsight, I'll look back and my gut was telling me the whole time to make a different choice, and I sort of ignored it because logic said otherwise. So I'm trying to listen to my body a bit more and not, just get it into balance, so I'm not entirely relying on, my thought processes, and I'm just trying to kind of feel it a bit more. It's a work in progress again. But yeah, don't know what else to say, really. I guess I'll speak to you tomorrow. Have a good one.